The following is a paid program by the Whitley Law Firm. Welcome to Attorneys on Call, the program that gives you free legal information from the Whitley Law Firm. Now, here's your host, Luis Garcia.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Attorneys on Call. I'm Luis Garcia, your host for today. We hope you stick around for the next 30 minutes because we have a lot of important information to share with you. By the way, the phone number for Attorneys on Call will be on screen the whole time, so you can take note of that phone number, 1-800-785-5000. You can call our office and find out more about the topics that will be discussed today on the show. With us today, Ben Whitley from the Whitley Law Firm. Thank you for joining us, Ben. Also with us, Stacy Miller from the Miller Law Group. Thank you for being here, Stacy. Today we're talking about a very particular chemical that's called Paraquat dichlorine. Now that is commonly known as Paraquat, and it's used in herbicides.
Right.
Now basically it's a weed killer, but it's a very toxic chemical. Now Ben, could you, before we get into the chemical aspect of it, can you tell us a little bit about how the Whitley Law Firm and the Miller Law Group have teamed up to cover this issue?
Sure. So, and thanks for having us, Luis. We think this is a very important issue for our farmers and our agricultural base in the eastern part of the state, because it is a herbicide, as you mentioned, that is used a lot in no-till farming. You know, it's commonly used to kill weeds, and what it has been discovered that there's a link between this herbicide and Parkinson's. So that's the issue, and the damage that has been caused by this herbicide is Parkinson's disease, which is it's a terrible neurological disorder. And so what I did is I wanted to find the A team, you know, the all-star,
dream team,
the
and A
dream team.
Yes.
And so Stacy Miller, Gary Shipman, who you're going to meet next on the next segment.
Sure.
These are trial lawyers with a lot of experience in cases like this, trying cases in front of juries. They also have great staff. And I also just wanted to make sure that we could build a team big enough to fight a huge multi-billion-dollar corporation, you know, and so that's why I brought them all in.
So, Stacy, your experience is in the courtroom dealing with this with these cases and trials.
Yeah, so I've been practicing law for almost 30 years. I grew up in the courtrooms of Eastern North Carolina, federal court, state court, and so this is sort of what we do. We fight big corporations for those who have been harmed, and what's sort of really relevant here is North Carolina is a big producer for cotton and corn, and Paraquat is used specifically for cotton and corn.
Right before the cotton season starts, they spray the fields with this chemical. Can you give us a little bit of background, Ben, about this this Paraquat chemical?
Right, and I'll tell you, you know, it's kind of a funny word. It's many people may know about it as a different word. It's trade name, Gramaxone. There's several others, and actually we prepared a slide to put on the screen that we can put on the screen now that has some of the commonly known names or the trade names that people may recognize from some of the bottles that they've used with that equipment.
Now, Paraquat is used in over 500,000 acres of farmland here in North Carolina. It's also widely used over 700,000 acres in South Carolina, and it's even a higher number in Georgia, over 1 million acres of farmland that uses Paraquat. Well, now you're talking about a lot of farms, a lot of people using this Paraquat herbicide in their companies and their farms.
Right.
You know, this is so toxic. A couple grams can be lethal. That's the equivalent of 2 or 3 drops. If you ingest that, it can be deadly.
It is really some nasty stuff. I mean, people have used it. Here's the thing, Luis. It's crazy. You know, naturally other animals don't develop Parkinson's, and so when our medical research labs, when they want to study Parkinson's, they have to study it on animals. They will actually give the animal this Paraquat so that it will cause Parkinson's to be studied. I mean, that's how closely the link is between Parkinson's and this chemical is.
So, Stacy, what have you seen in the people that come to you with some of these health problems because of Paraquat?
Yeah, Parkinson's disease is a progressive disease. Unfortunately, it's not curable. And what we're seeing is the application of Paraquat is broadly sprayed on these crops by airplanes. As you have folks that are working in the fields are exposed to it. And there's also this phenomenon called drift, where the spray drifts over to communities that are closely, next to the crops or the fields, and those folks are getting exposed to it as well.
It's kind of like secondhand smoke.
Very similar.
Yeah. So it's dangerous if you inhale it. It's dangerous if you touch it. It's dangerous if you just are around it.
Right.
Now, during the COVID days, you saw people, especially in the medical field, with PPE,
right.
the protective garments.
Right.
Now, when you use this Paraquat, you're supposed to use the PPEs.
That's right.
But sometimes it's not always the case.
No, and in fact, what Stacy mentioned, because this is such a widespread application, like you said, Luis, 500,000 acres in North Carolina annually, every year that this is used. So the applicators could be protected if they're wearing the proper PPE, but we're talking about the drift, we're talking about other farm workers. And to know whether or not you have a claim is whether or not you've had a diagnosis of Parkinson's or you know someone. And what we're trying to do with this show today is, because this isn't well known, we're trying to educate
Yes.
people and let people know that.
Let's find out.
Yes.
Let's find out if this is the root cause
Right.
of your family members' Parkinson's disease, if they worked on a farm, if they worked in the field. So I want to take a moment to remind you, call the 1-800 number. It's 800-785-5000. Again, 785-5000 if you need more information from the Whitley Law Firm or the Miller Law Group. We have another guest on schedule for
Right.
today who's going to talk to us about some of these trial cases, some of the cases that have gone to court,
Right.
and some of the people that have legitimate claims
Right.
against Paraquat. What just briefly, what are some of those claims that you can come up with?
Well, it has to be a diagnosis of Parkinson's disease. So if you have had a diagnosis of Parkinson's disease and you think that there may have been some exposure, meaning that if you lived near a farm or if you worked on a farm or you had any interaction with any type of agricultural industry that could have exposed you to this, and you have that diagnosis, you may have a case. And Luis, it's a free consultation.
Sure.
100% free. Call us.
Yeah, especially corn and cotton fields.
Yes.
And that's huge in North Carolina.
That's correct.
Okay. So stay with us. We have another guest coming up on the show briefly. This is Attorneys on Call, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. This is Attorneys on Call, 1-800-785-5000, the phone number on your screen. Please feel free to write it down. Keep it handy. Ben Whitley with us, and now we have Gary Shipman from Shipman and Wright alongside us. Thank you for being here on the show.
Thank you for having me, Ben.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me.
It's a very important topic. We're talking about Paraquat today. If you just joined the show, we're talking about Paraquat dichlorine. It's a very highly toxic chemical used commonly in the U.S. Gary, this is a chemical that's been banned in the European Union. It's banned in 32 countries, including China, Brazil, and most of Europe. Why is it still being used here in the U.S.?
Great question. And I think when we look back upon the history of this chemical, we will lament that EPA and other governmental regulators did not do something sooner. When we look back at this chemical, I think we'll compare it to the secrecy that was involved in the tobacco industry for many, many years, where for many years the tobacco industry told us that, notwithstanding the science to the contrary, that tobacco smoking was safe. Well, that's what's involved here now.
Yeah.
That for years and years and years, the distributors and manufacturers of Paraquat have said it's safe, but for its toxic effects, when in fact studies for more than 50 years, their own internal studies, have shown that not to be a fact. Now, why is it still on the market in the United States? Because it is so effective in controlling weeds. Weeds that have now become resistant to one of the largest competitors to Paraquat, and that is Roundup. So I think that some have made the decision that the end justifies the means, and that there's not a fitting replacement for Paraquat yet for the agricultural industry, and so I think everyone is just
kind of going, yeah, cover your eyes and just keep going. Now, Ben, if somebody knows that they're using this chemical in their farm or in their industry, what is the proper thing to do now? What should I do if I know that a spouse or my grandfather works in this industry and he's using some of these chemicals? What should I do for him? What is the proper steps?
Well, you know, we're going to offer free consultations. So you can call the number on the screen, and if you think there may have been an exposure with someone you know or their family member, we'll be able to give you some resources. We'll tell you if we think you have a case. And, you know, if you have a case that Gary and Stacy and I can help you with, then you don't have to pay us anything up front. It'll be based on a contingency fee. So it's a free call to see if you have a case. If you have a case and we can move forward, it's not going to cost you anything unless we win that case.
Now, earlier in the show, you mentioned you're building this dream team, the A team of attorneys.
Right.
Gary is included in that team.
Yeah, well, listen, ask him about his experience now.
Please, Gary, tell us about some of the similar cases that you've handled in the past before.
Well, it just makes me older than Mr. Whitley and Mr. Miller is the only reason I get to talk.
Older and wiser.
Well,
Yeah.
maybe. I've been practicing law more than 40 years. I am a certified civil trial specialist. I have tried more than 150 jury trials to verdict in courtrooms all across the United States, and then hundreds of other matters. My first toxic tort, I know I don't look that old, was 40 years ago.
Okay.
Since that time, I've been involved in many matters involving toxins and their effects on the human body, the neurological system, etc. This particular case,
with Paraquat, it goes straight into the cells, and it's one of the root causes of Parkinson's. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, for years, there has been a suspicion that environmental factors played a role in the development of Parkinson's. Genetic factors could play a role. But as we have seen over the last 10 years, science has gotten really aggressive to understand the method by which Paraquat enters the system, and as importantly, the method by which it enters the brain cells and causes a degrading of the cells in the brain, the particular portion of the brain that is particularly associated with Parkinson's disease.
Among others, right?
Correct,
Yes.
Exactly. The biggest question has been, given that Paraquat many times is used in conjunction with other herbicides, is Paraquat in combination with other chemicals a cause of Parkinson's? I think as we sit here today in 2023, science has come to the point where they understand that the mechanism that causes Parkinson and Paraquat and what is in Paraquat is indeed a cause of Parkinson's disease.
So the link has been proven. The link is there.
If you ask the manufacturers, they say no, meaning today. If you talk to the lawyers that are defending Syngenta, they aggressively state to this date that the product is safe when it is used in a safe manner, notwithstanding that the science shows something else.
Now, even when it's used in a safe manner, if you're wearing all the PPE protection, goggles and skin protection, there's still a higher risk for the person to develop a disease like Parkinson's. Now, like we mentioned earlier on the program, inhaling it, touching it, ingesting it, it's all cause for illness.
Well, that is the significance of this issue. It's always been recognized that if you picked up a cup and drank it, it would kill you instantly. What has not been known is the inhalation of the molecules associated with this chemical will enter your brain. That has not been understood. It is now understood that that is the method by which most people are exposed, inhalation exposure, and that inhalation exposure is a cause of the changes in the brain that lead to Parkinson's disease.
So, Ben, for our viewers, once again, a free consultation is the best first step to take. 1-800-785-5000, the number on the screen is the number you should call. Ben, I'm not speculating here, but you're going to see a lot of people try to find out about this Paraquat because it could be so dangerous and lead to Parkinson's, cancers, other things.
Yeah, and I think there's just not enough information out there. And we mentioned this earlier in the show. I'm going to ask that they put the slide back up on the screen that's going to show the other trade names. We've used the word Paraquat, but it comes the brand names that would be on the bottles or the equipment. That'll be on the screen. There's a whole list of names that this has been known as a trade name.
So if you see any of these products that you're seeing on the screen, in your garage, in the farm, in the barn, please, just for your safety, don't touch, don't drink, don't inhale any of this stuff because it is quite deadly.
It is deadly. And North Carolina requires a special license to apply it. I mean, there is some degree of safety around it and regulation
and
around
rules.
It. Correct.
Yeah. So, Gary, just to wrap up here, what can people expect once they get a consultation and start the investigation? What can people expect? What can a client expect from your office?
First, responsiveness. Next, a complete and thorough investigation of the medical history of your family member or yourself. Then, a conscious and informed determination as to whether a claim exists, and if a claim exists, a recommendation that a lawsuit be filed against the manufacturers of this chemical. That's the process, if you will.
So then after that, the process starts. Once they are determined to have Parkinson's or some other disease caused by Paraquat, that's when you individually take these cases to court.
That's when we will file individual lawsuits on behalf of the claimants. Those cases will likely end up in a federal court in Illinois, which is where this case is presently headquartered. And then, yes, efforts will be made to get those cases ready for trial and hopefully, depending upon the level of preparation, get those cases resolved without them having to go to trial.
But again, this is a chemical that's used nationwide. It's used in North Carolina specifically and a lot of the corn and cotton fields, South Carolina, Georgia, over 1 million acres. That's a lot of product being used.
That's right. And it's a product that I think that just not enough information has been put out there about some of the risks. I think people heard in the news about the Roundup verdicts, and I think that kind of confused a lot of the issues. This is not Roundup. This is a different chemical.
The Roundup is more of a household chemical,
Correct.
But this is more industrial.
More industrial, commercial type applications.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, so again, if you've known of someone, a family member, or you personally have used this as an applicator, please call the number on the screen, and you can see the name brands again on your screen. And if any of these products are nearby in your garage, in your home, please be careful. We want to just reiterate how dangerous this chemical is, Paraquat. So again, if you want to call and get a free consultation, a free evaluation, you'll be able to do that with Ben Whitley and Attorneys on Call. We're going to take a brief break, and we'll be back with more information for you on this important topic. It's Attorneys on Call. Thank you for being here and joining us. 1-800-785-5000, the number for a free case evaluation. We're talking about Paraquat. We have Stacy Miller back with us from the Miller Law Group. Stacy, tell us a little bit about the background of Paraquat and how it's being used in cornfields and cotton fields.
Yeah, the application here in North Carolina has largely been corn and cotton. It used to be Roundup, but Roundup is not as effective as it once was, and so they're using Paraquat. It's a more powerful chemical. It kills a lot of the weeds, and so they're spraying it all over the 500,000
At
acres.
least 500,000 in North Carolina. Can somebody who is sometimes people will develop a disease and not even know they have it yet. It's a progression. Parkinson's is one of those diseases that it just kind of starts slow, but then gets more aggressive.
Yeah, a lot of time you see early onset, you see tremors in your fingers or your arms, and that's sometimes a signal for early onset. It takes a while for some folks to get diagnosed, and so if you have early onset these tremors, you really need to pay attention. This could be caused from Paraquat.
Sure. And Ben, so now there's some laws that say you can only file a claim if it's within the last 10 years.
Right.
There's a statute of limitations
Right.
for
People know
most
that.
cases,
Yeah.
right? So what if somebody's lost a loved one from Parkinson's, say in the last 5-10 years, and they think that, because they worked in a cornfield or a cotton field, that it might be associated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I would still call. I think anybody that has a situation where they have a lost family member or loved one that was because of Parkinson's, and that loved one you were near some type of agricultural industry, even living beside a farm, could potentially expose you to this chemical
Because of that spraying
because of the drift that he was talking about.
Stacy
Right.
was talking about. Yeah.
There's certain exceptions that may apply where
Okay.
you may not have known about it, and now we know about it. So I would still encourage anyone that has any passed away loved one to it's still a free consultation to
Sure.
see if they can apply for this case. And with Parkinson's, it's a terrifying disease. Anything neurological, any disease is, but neurological especially when it's happening to young people. So
Sure.
there could be some resistance in getting diagnosis. But as Stacy says, if you've had some issues neurological going on and you can relate it and you have been in that farming industry, then there could be a connection that's worth looking into.
Sure, and there's cases now that come up of people as young as 40 or 30 with some of these diseases.
Right, and that's just, obviously there's something else going on. This isn't a normal disease occurrence, and as Gary mentioned earlier, sometimes Parkinson's really doesn't even develop
Right away.
without some type of environmental
Sure.
impact.
Right. A very few percentage of people who get Parkinson's has got it as a result of some sort of genetic inheritance.
Mm-hmm.
So it's brought on by some of these toxic chemicals, and Paraquat is one of the
It's one of
deadliest.
They give Paraquat to animals to cause Parkinson's so that they
In
can
the studies,
so they can research Parkinson's.
Right.
Right.
And again, North Carolina, we're a farming community. We're cotton and we're corn.
Sure, and a lot of people are working in those industries.
Right.
Correct.
So again, if those chemicals are near you or near your home, we want to reiterate how dangerous they are. Please stay away from them. We're going to put some of the brand names up on the screen for you to kind of go through some of these products, because Paraquat is used in a wide variety of herbicides.
Correct.
Basically a weed killer. So if any of this is found on your in or around your property, please stay away, especially children. There's been cases of children just touching this stuff, and
only 2.5 grams will kill you.
Yeah,
Just a little vial.
2-3 drops.
Right.
Yeah. So, Stacy, again, you've joined the dream team, as we're calling it now, and you're part of this group. You have a lot of people behind you as well. You're the attorneys, but you also have the paralegals and the assistants. So when I call this number, the 1-800-785-5000 number, I'm going to get a receptionist, and they're going to walk me through the process. There's nothing to be scared of, right?
Nothing. And again, it's a free consultation.
Somebody's going to be on the line.
We've got trained
taking
specialists
care
on the
of
other
you.
line. They're going to walk you through the process and kind of help determine whether or not you have a claim. And for some folks that may not want to call, you can send an email or go on the website, and there's a chat feature and text feature. So we're going to make it very easy for us to reach us. The cool thing is our entire teams for all
Sure.
three firms are together
Sure.
to bring to bear
This is
justice.
And this is a national issue. It's not.
is.
It's not just affecting this region of the country, but it's
national,
a product that's used all over the nation.
And many countries have banned it.
Including the European Union, Brazil, China, 32 other countries?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, some of these countries would not be seen as typically banning chemicals,
Right.
and when they're banning chemicals,
Correct.
you got to really think, what is going on?
Right. So the alarm is sounding. We need to take notice. If you know somebody who's working in the fields or in the farms that has used this chemical, Paraquat dichlorine, it's commonly known as Paraquat and is used in dozens of brand names. Please call the number on your screen or visit the website. It's 1-800-785-5000. You're going to be greeted by a friendly staff member from Ben Whitley staff and Stacy Miller staff. So please, if you know somebody or you've personally been affected by it, call the number on the screen. So, Stacy, this is something that you're going to be hearing about in the news a lot more coming up, right? I mean, this is alarming.
As these cases mature, we'll hear more about it. The breadth of people that has been exposed to this has been tremendous. And so people will be getting diagnosed with this horrible disease in the future. And a lot of it's going to be attributed to the exposure of Paraquat.
Some of these illnesses take, it's a long progression. It takes some years sometimes from the onset to full-on illness. So it's a progressive illness, Parkinson's.
Unfortunately, it's a progressive disease and it's not curable.
So we want to reiterate, call if you know someone or you personally been affected by it, 1-800-785-5000. Ben, it's always a pleasure having this information handy. It's always a pleasure having the show to provide the free information for our viewers.
And that's the point of all this. We want to get the information out. We don't think that there's enough facts about this to protect our North Carolinians.
Sure, you can't get this in a 30-second TV news commercial. You know, you got to really understand the topic and understand what's behind it.
Right.
So I really want to thank you guys for being on the program today. It's been very informative. Gary Shipman also was with us, and we want to thank Gary for his knowledge and understanding. Anytime you want to catch up on Attorneys on Call, we are always available on our YouTube channel as well. So please log on online, catch some of this information if you missed it. If you're just joining us, it's a very important topic we want to share with everybody. So thank you, Stacy, for being here. It's a pleasure. Ben, as usual, please call the number on the screen, 1-800-785-5000. Paraquat was the topic today, and it's something that's very near to our industry, farming industry here in North Carolina.
Yes,
thank you, guys. Thank you. So once again, we want to thank you for being with us today. The number is 1-800-785-5000. If you or a loved one have been affected by Paraquat, we want to urge you to call the number 1-800-785-5000. My name is Luis Garcia. I want to thank you for joining us once more on Attorneys on Call.